This is Shine 309, presented by Fly Square Media. My next guest is the owner of Hometown Senior Care Advisors. He was a finalist for the New and Emerging Business of Excellence. It's my pleasure to introduce Nick Hibbs.
Hey,
What's
Dylan.
up, Nick?
How are you?
Good. How's it going, man?
Good.
Ooh, I'm working on those intros, you know.
It's fun being in here. This little thing you got here made me remember my first job in high school was working as a DJ at a radio station. Evening and weekend guy.
What radio station was it?
It was in Pontiac, Illinois. I can't remember the tag. WJBC? Is that the one here? I'm going to mess
Was
it
it AM or AM radio?
No, it was PM. It was PM radio.
What kind of music did y'all play? Oldies?
Like 50s, 60s oldies.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of music were you into growing up?
Growing up,
I feel like that says a lot about a person.
I was probably a weird mixture between like whatever popular hip hop was going on at the time and popular pop.
That's probably why we vibed.
It was like boy band era and Britney Spears era, but there was also the other stuff too. So it was a weird mixture. Whatever was on TRL, right?
No, yeah, we grew up on similar music probably. Well, that was like I was hardcore into hip hop through junior high and high school, right? You remember old school CD books? You'd be like,
Yeah.
Let me see your CD book. And mine was practically nothing but hip hop. I might have had like 3 CDs that were out of that genre. So then when I look at your CD book and I go through it, and if I saw anything else, I'd be like, oh, like you might like hip hop, but you're not a real hip hop fan. But no, that's funny. Didn't know we was gonna go there with it. No.
Quickly.
I am curious. Hometown Senior Care Advisors. Tell me more about that. You said it, and recently in a group setting, you explained it a little bit.
Yep.
But dive into that and tell me, what is it exactly you do with your company?
Yeah, so what we do is we're a free service for families. We help them find the right kind of care for their seniors.
Let me cut you off right
Yeah.
there. So is that a not-for-profit when you say free?
No. So
how do you make money with your business if you're offering a free service?
Yeah, so this is how it works. We talk to the family, and our whole point is to advise them through a process, right? Most people don't understand or have the resources available to them early enough in life to understand how to care for their aging parents or grandparents. So they get thrown in these situations where they've got to make decisions. So what they do is they come to us, they kind of tell us what's going on with their loved one. We help them find the right kind of options for their situation. If they end up choosing any of those options that we help them with, then we collect a payment from whoever we got them connected to.
So is it in your interest as the business owner to have relationships with as many senior care facilities as you can?
Absolutely. I mean, we want to do that for a few different reasons. The first one is we want to have as much information about them as we can, because if a family is reaching out and they're describing the situation, we need to be able to not just narrow down between independent living, assisted living, memory care, nursing home, but we need to be able to then break it down even more and say, well, this memory care specializes in this kind of care, or assisted living doesn't do lifts, and be able to kind of direct them a little bit further.
Do you know off the top of your head how many facilities you have relationships with?
I know it's over 2,000. I don't know the exact number.
Okay.
But over 2,000 in the United States. I think if I remember right, we're missing one state. It's only 49 states. So I think maybe Alaska. I think it might be Alaska. I know we got a couple in Hawaii. Otherwise, it would just be 48. But we got those couple.
So you're serving people on a national level?
Not necessarily. So basically how I started it was we wanted to help people locally here in Central Illinois first and foremost. It's a service that just doesn't exist around here. You really just have to kind of fumble through it and do all your own research, which is really time consuming and pretty frustrating. So we wanted to do it here. And as I've kind of started doing things, because we don't have borders around our company, a lot of the communities operate nationally. So as we start to work with them in one area, we go ahead and collect the information on all their other properties at the same time. It doesn't always come up, but it's come up numerous times where it's been helpful to have that, because we might be helping somebody that's moving from our area to another area.
Right.
Or, they're helping a senior that happens to live 3 states away. And guess what? We look at it and we actually work with 50 communities in that area. We can get you information on some of the options.
How long you been doing this for?
So 2 years, a little shy of 2 years. We started in 2023.
And then what got you into this?
Yeah, a few different things. So I always feel like I fell into working with seniors to begin with. And then there was a falling into this situation that happened next. So like when I say I fell into working with seniors, I came out of college in 2009 and I wanted to work in finance. I loved playing with numbers. I had an economics degree. And I wanted to leverage that for like playing in the market, right? I wanted somebody to teach me how to do that. And I wanted to be a financial advisor type person. And I don't know if you know much about the years 2008, 2009, but not a very good time to come out wanting to help people with their finances, because there'd just been a big crash in the stock market, all this stuff. So there wasn't a whole lot of people lining up for the new kid to help them with their finances. And when I was doing that right after college, I hated what I was doing. But one thing that I did start to help quite a few people with was they needed to get long-term care insurance. And that's what people use a lot of times to pay for some of the senior living options. And that was really the spin, is I did not like what I was doing. This was the one thing I was succeeding in with that at that time. And I wanted to see what people used it for. So I started spending more time at the places that they would go use that. And sure enough, that ended up being kind of where I fell in love with like what I wanted to do next.
When you said you didn't enjoy what you were doing, what were you doing at that time?
So it ended up being a lot more insurance than anything. It was supposed to be financial advisor. I won't name the company, but once I got into it, it was a lot more selling life insurance and disability insurance and all this stuff. And it just wasn't a passion of mine, and it wasn't fun. It was the kind of sales that you don't want to have to do, where you're calling, everybody that your mom knows and your dad knows, all this, trying to set up meetings. It was not fun. But I found this little niche, and that's what kind of transitioned me into like, hey, I want to work in senior living. I did that for 13 years, worked in a couple different roles. I was a regional for 9 years with a couple different companies, and then a corporate person for 3 years. So my last role was vice president of a nationwide memory care company. And oddly enough, my father-in-law got early onset dementia at that same time. And when that was going on, we were trying to find resources here in this area. And what we found is many of the resources that were being given to my family, as I would look them over, as somebody knew how it operated, I would look it over and go, this either isn't helpful, it's not right. It's an enormous list of options that aren't really relevant. And all of that's what kind of spun me into starting this service, going, families need more help. And they need somebody to give them not just, here are all the options Google would give you, but these are the ones that are good ones, bad ones. This is what they specialize in. This is what happens when your money runs out at this one versus that one, and kind of walk them through all the details.
Well, that sounds like a fantastic resource. This last year, we had to deal with the situation of finding care for a loved one. And it's hard because it's not, you don't walk into that, one, knowing what to do, and two, like, it's emotional and it's draining and it's stressful and there's so many emotions. It's not like another day at work or let me explore this. It's something terrible and it's life altering sometimes. And then like you're stuck in a really hard position. And then to have that as a resource sounds incredible. So say you how does somebody find you? Or is it a referral based thing? Or like if somebody's looking for care in the community, would the places that are available know to point them to you? Or like, I'm just curious how somebody that's going through something personally, how do they find your company, or how would they even know that you exist?
Yeah, I'd say right now, most people find us from a medical or professional or medical or business professional that they work with. So
is it like that laundry list of businesses you said that your Rolodex of 2,000 people, they'd be like, Nick's a resource over here with senior care?
No, actually, kind of the opposite. So those like 2,000 plus, those are communities. That's where people might choose to move into, right? More where our families come from, though, are your doctors, the hospitals, could be your financial planner right after I'm done bad-mouthing how much I hated working in that industry. Insurance agents, we get some from there, senior centers. It comes from a variety of places. Really what happens is people start to recognize, once they've heard about me or us and what we do, they start to recognize families that have a senior that they're trying to help, right? There's a pain point there that all of a sudden the family's having to go make trips to mom or grandma's house all the time to take meals, take her garbage out, mow the lawn. And it's like the more those things stack up, people in their kind of circle of influence, if they've met me, they realize this is probably somebody that Nick can give some resources to. And that's usually how a lot of these conversations start. Of course, people can find us online like any other business, hometownseniorcare.com. Got the contact us button just like everybody else, but a lot of people end up finding out about us word of mouth, getting that direct referral.
And then, so how big is your organization? Is it just you, or do you got other people out helping you organize, coordinate, or like how big's your operation?
Yeah, it's getting bigger. It actually started just me, and I did that it was probably a full year of just me, which I don't know if you'd consider yourself by yourself in your entity or not, but it's a lonely feeling. It's a hard trek to go through. But I'm fortunate at this point that just like I've done in kind of central Illinois, I've had people start to reach out to me that also want to do it in their area. So we've gone from me by myself kind of covering most of central Illinois, heavily focused on Bloomington Normal, to now I believe I'm up to 8 advisors in different pockets. So my closest couple is I've got an advisor in the Champaign-Urbana area, one in Peoria, and one in the Chicagoland area. She's in the western suburbs. So those are my closest advisors. So they've started kind of taking over areas that I may have started the work in, and now they're the ones driving it forward. But then because of some opportunities, we've expanded in some areas that we didn't necessarily expect. St. Louis market, Kansas City, Tulsa and Oklahoma City, Houston, and Amarillo, Texas, of all places.
Why those places? Is it just where you established relationships and it worked out and made sense, or there's the need for it and you have a contact there, or why are you in those communities?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things. About half of those areas fit kind of what I wanted to do when it came to Bloomington Normal. A little bit more of a rural area, big town, but not big enough town. So that little bit more of a rural area that has enough population to have this problem and enough options to need somebody to explain to you through the options, and without having anybody that does something like this right now. So that would be kind of the Bloomington Normal market, Peoria, Champaign, Amarillo would fit that mold a lot for us as we looked at it. Tulsa and Oklahoma City actually are kind of teeter on it a little bit, Tulsa especially. And then the other ones were really more people focused.
Tulsa's a pretty big community. We've been to Tulsa.
Yeah.
How do you land that though? Like, and I guess I'm specific. Like, how did you land in Tulsa?
Yeah.
Like, well, I'm just curious. Like, how do you? Is it someone there, and you're like,
yeah,
or do you put out an ad in the paper? You're like, we need some help coordinating some seniors, or
yeah, a little bit of both. But when it comes to Tulsa, it was knowing the right person, right? And that's what happened with a couple of these situations. Is people that either I knew from my past or knew, we had a middleman that knew both of us and said, hey, this person right here, you guys need to talk. And a lot of the folks that have come to me, just like me, they had their history in senior living. They've got all this knowledge. They know how it works. They know all the steps and all the ins and outs. But what they don't have is, or what they don't want to do anymore is they don't want to go into a 9 to 5 sitting in a building every day, just like most of the world right now, right? They want that flexibility in their schedule, at least a hybrid type setting. And that's kind of what my advisors do, because half the time they're out just mingling, talking to people, learning all of the resources that are available for seniors in their area. And then the other half of the time is talking to the families and dispersing that information.
Are you looking to grow? Do you want to continue to reach more communities? And like, what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Hoping to continue to add advisors. I certainly want to eat up the rest of Illinois. I think there's still more opportunity there. For some of my advisors, you're certainly less than a year into them being with us. So we still have opportunity even within each one of those markets that we exist. I'd like to get some more in Southern Illinois, things like that. And then we probably start targeting some of the Iowa, Indiana, Missouri, some of the again, more rural areas in between the big cities.
I might have some resources in Southern Illinois. I went to school down there, and I still know some people. I worked down there for a couple of years, and so I don't know if I could reach out to anyone and try to plug you in a little bit. But yeah, just anywhere to help you get that coverage would be great.
I love it.
And then what does that look like? So how do you train your advisors?
Yeah, so it generally starts with kind of talking them through all of our systems and how they work, because we've got a really cool system that, if somebody calls me right now, as much as I do typically have my area memorized, I don't have to have it memorized. We talk through everything that's going on with their loved one, kind of what the financial picture is. And then I go to this area where I can put in the area that they're looking and bring up all the options and start filtering them and things like that, right? So for us, I think that when it comes to, I don't know what your question was.
Oh, I was just curious. Oh, like say I put you in touch with somebody in Southern Illinois, and then you're like, cool.
Oh, training
how
is
do you
what
train
you'd
an
ask.
advisor?
Yeah.
How do you teach somebody to be that resource, and like, what does that job look like for them? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So first we just kind of look at like, okay, this is the resource and how it's set up. And then what it becomes is, all right, now we just need to feed this system with information. We generally have quite a bit of information on the senior living communities because that's where the end comes for any family we're working with. That's generally where it's kind of, we're done working with you because we've helped you accomplish all we can at this point. The home is no longer an option. We've made the move. But what we really want within each of the markets is start to know all of the things that seniors can get, because most families don't want to make that move. That's what they're trying to avoid, right? So we do need that information, and that is important to us to help people at that stage. But we also like helping them much earlier, and that comes from going into the market, learning who are the home care companies, home health cares, hospice companies, what are the hospitals in town and how do they operate, and starting to learn all those things about your market so that we've got those same resources for the families. Because that's generally the first thing we're doing with families is walking through like, all right, here's your current situation and what you're trying to accomplish. Here's some more resources that has nothing to do with how we get paid, but here's resources that will help you stay and help you make it work at home. And hey, by the way, here's some information on some senior living communities to hold on to in case it just doesn't work anymore.
I'm wondering what we could tell any families that are like, that's around the corner. Like, grandma's doing good right now, but in the next 5 to 10 years, they might need a resource like that. Like, what's the first step for people if they're looking for care for their seniors?
Well, I think the first thing is kind of like what you said, like if they're looking at their loved one saying they don't need any help right now and we're cool there, then it's about how do we keep them there? How do we keep them in that state and not let them get to the point where they do have challenges? I mean, any one of us, if we live long enough, we'll reach that point. But I think that there are things that can be planned ahead to start taking some of the stress load off of the senior that does make it a little bit safer for them to stay at home. And then you just don't have the little one-off incidents that push them into an assisted living or a skilled nursing facility, stuff like that.
I got you. Yeah, that's what my dad ended up on hospice. And then I had heard of hospice. I associate hospice with like end of life care. I thought it was you're in a facility and it's like you're on your remaining days.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that there was in-home hospice, and it's like they will come and check on you once a week, or they will, and then overnight he got a box of meds delivered, and I was like, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. Like they were giving my man some dope, and I was like, this is crazy. But
well, it's funny. There's a lot of hospice companies, and I've gotten to know several of the people that kind of do the marketing and the outreach for those companies, and all of them say the same thing, that people don't use hospice early enough.
That was weird. Very same thing for us. That like we knew. I don't remember. We thought we knew we needed care, and then we looked. It was after we knew what it was. We wish we would have known.
Yeah.
So that's why this is great that these conversations are happening, and let people know that like hospice is available, and it's not end of life care necessarily. Right. It's senior care before that end of life, before those final steps. Like you can have somebody help you out because it can be a burden on families.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I think most people think that yes, it's end of life care till those last few days, and I don't know that I was dramatically different until a couple of years in the industry. But, I think that what's missed is what they can do for families from a mental and well-being perspective, not just the senior or whoever's getting the care. Like they generally provide a lot of resources for just grief counseling and just how to mentally handle what's happening. And it's just such a sense of relief for most families to have somebody else just in it with them that kind of knows some of the answers.
So what kind of I guess we talked about growing your coverage. Like do you individually, like do you have any goals? Are you just trying to manage what you have now, or do you have any goals? Are you like, I want you want it in every state, or you want advisors everywhere, or like what are some short-term and long-term goals you have with your company?
Yeah, I'm probably not to the point of having kind of a grand master plan mapped out, other than the advisors that I've gotten started in the past year, I want them to be successful. Right. So a lot of this year, any expansion is probably based off of them doing well, not because of anything other than I want to invest time in them. So like if they're not all doing well, I can't divert my time to other people that are going to join for new areas. So that'll probably be the thing this year, is making sure they're all off to a good start, that they're self-sufficient. And then that allows us to, all right, the next round of advisors in other areas, so that we can start helping more families.
I guess then just from a business standpoint, you said you're only 2 years into this, right?
Yeah.
So now you're expanding and you're learning what it's like to manage multiple advisors.
Yeah.
Then once they're all up and running and they're self-sufficient and they're good to go, then you can kind of figure out systems to train new advisors, and then you can really spread and grow.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's some of the things that it's an exciting time because I can see ahead enough to know that there are definitely things that we can become more efficient in that are going to allow us to expand faster. And it's fun to be able to see and know exactly where some of those things are. Like you said, like that kind of training in a box for somebody to get started and really getting that mapped out so that it's not such a time crunch. That'll be exciting to be at. We're not there yet, but it'll be exciting. Same thing with social media. Like that's one of the things I'm terrible at. I don't keep up on it. Getting to that point where it's like, all right, we've got somebody that manages social media for us and is on it. That'll be a cool time too.
I think it's great. I think some of the best businesses, like as I learn more about business, it's like all about providing value. And then the more value you can bring others, the more valuable you become.
Yeah.
And then so a lot of things we do are profit driven, but at the end of the day, it's much better. Like I don't think people get up every day just to make money.
Yeah.
Or like of course you do. Everyone wants to make a living and provide those luxuries in life or whatever. But like whenever you actually have a passion about what you're doing and what you're doing is making a difference and literally helping people, like I think those are the very best businesses. And it sounds like that's what you're doing with your company.
We're certainly trying to. I think that one of the things that I run across all the time is families that are saying things like, you were God sent and all this stuff. And I always think to myself, like, I really don't know what brought me here, what's got me excited about this and why I'm interested. But for me, like you said, it's not about the money. I know the answers. So if somebody calls me and it's not a situation where I get paid on and I know the answers, I still take the time to do that, right? And I think that's important for businesses to do when they can as well.
So when should people reach out to you?
Good question. Actually, what we love is when people reach out to us earlier, right? We've all got grandparents or parents that have hit certain ages. And I feel like sometimes this topic, because they know that mom, grandma, we're not giving the dads and the grandpas any love today, but we know that none of them want to move. So it's like everybody's afraid to address the topic and nobody wants to bring it up. What we would love is for families to reach out to us much earlier, not because they're going to make a move, but because they're seeing their senior at home and they want to make that last as long as possible. Some of the things that we end up helping families with in those situations is, we might even connect them with people to do home alterations for the senior to keep it safer at home. We'll get them in touch with things like Meals on Wheels, or in this area it's called Peace Meals. Other resources available that just are free or next to free for helping seniors in their home and to allow it to stay. Great organization in town called LifeSIL, Life Center for Independent Living is what it stands for. So it's like those things that people just don't think about. We can help get those things kind of in their hands to consider for helping that senior stay active and at home and safe. And then, yes, we can get you the information on senior living, but we know just as well as everybody else, that's what you're trying to avoid. And when we reach that point, that's not the funnest thing for anybody. It's more fun to help them figure out how can we prolong this situation, keep them at home? How can we keep them safe, keep them from going to the hospital, those sort of things.
So you had a background in finance, and it kind of evolved into this. Then say like somebody needs to put somebody in senior care. Then is that like they have to figure out on their own what their insurance covers, what they got to pay, or the financial aspect, or is that something else that you can be a resource for?
Good question. We can we can give people a college degree in senior living today. So most people don't understand how payment works. So generally, insurance isn't going to cover anything. It doesn't cover anything when it comes to senior living. What people get confused by sometimes is they've heard that Medicare covers things. And I'll explain. Medicare covers something, they cover something called short-term rehab.
I have experience with that. My dad was in a home and they gave him up to 21 days. And on that 22nd day, we brought him back home for in-home care. And it was like, it's because they're outrageous. It's $8,000 a month, or it was $900, whatever it was. It was like, that would destroy us. And the care expenses outstanding. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. So like when people think that insurance covers it, there's only one situation. It's for a very small period of time. And that is if a senior is in the hospital for 3 consecutive nights. Now Medicare will cover skilled nursing facility for short-term rehab. Most people don't know skilled nursing facility, that means nursing home. That's the proper term for nursing home, right? So at that point, your loved one goes to the skilled nursing facility and they get a guaranteed 20 days covered by Medicare. After that 20 days, they can qualify for up to another 80 days, but I think it's an 80-20 rule. You still pay 20%. Like you said, these are not cheap places. It's $8,000 a month, so you're still paying something. After that 100 days, Medicare doesn't cover anything now. Now you're paying out of your pocket. If you stay beyond that, it's $8,000 plus. Some of the places are more like 10, 11,000, and certainly different areas of the country explode.
Yeah, that 8K was for the low end ones. And
yeah,
I know there's much
shared
nicer,
units,
much nicer facilities.
Yeah. So that comes up a lot where people don't understand that. So really, when it comes to these senior living options and paying for them, or even the home care options, when you're trying to do things at home, you're paying out of your pocket for this until money runs out. Generally. There is an exception, I'll get to it, but you're paying out of your pocket until your money runs down to $17,500 in all of your assets. Once you hit that point, you can transition to Medicaid. And once you transition to Medicaid, your options are likely different. The place you've been living at probably is not a Medicaid place. You can't stay there. But now you've got this new round of options, which are generally supportive livings, which are hard to find. They do have them, but depending on your area of the country, they might be pretty spread out. The other option is the skilled nursing facilities, the nursing homes, right? You can be there under Medicaid. The only exception to all of this that I can think of is people have long-term care insurance. If they got that insurance, that will pay, but that's a completely different type of insurance than your Blue Cross Blue Shield. And unfortunately, nowadays, most of us can't get long-term care insurance. Insurance companies have stopped selling it for the most part. They must be bleeding through the nose on those old policies.
So is it because of the baby boomers?
I don't know what it
like
is.
A whole generation in the next decade's gonna.
I'm guessing the actuarial people way back then just didn't anticipate the escalation of cost and how pricey those policy payouts would really be. But I'm not sure. But yeah, a lot of companies don't sell them anymore.
Well, again, with your background in the financial district or whatever, and then now doing this, basically, I guess what I'm getting at is, how do you stay sharp? How do you stay current and relevant? Like, what do you have to do to continue learning and continue being on the ball with your industry?
Yeah, well, and this goes back to staying in contact with as many people as possible. So like, hey, all the communities we partner with or that we have information on, we try to stay in their business too, about like what's relevant in their world, and that allows us to kind of keep up with things that are coming up.
Because I feel like there's not like a class you can go take to be up on what's going on with senior care. It's like you have to be in that space and build relationships and see what's current. And like if legislation passes or if anything, like every year, don't new things roll out.
Some new things can roll out, and every state is different. That's one thing people don't usually understand is every state has their own regulations for assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing facilities. So it can change state by state as to how it really works. But yes, it's important to keep up, and really all you can do is just put as much information in front of yourself as possible. Keep in touch with other people that are in positions in the industry to have to know it too. So then you just kind of get that full circle of information. There are some organizations that kind of put out basically news and press releases on senior living and what's going on in that world, or senior care. So those are important too, but some of it is just really knowing your own market that you're in and really just being the expert of what's going on there. And yes, to some degree, know what's going on nationally.
That feels like that would be a challenge, maybe to stay up on it, or maybe it doesn't change that much. It's kind of like it's in place, and there's only so many regulations that could change day to day. But I guess that brings me to another question then. What are some of your biggest challenges doing what you're doing?
One of the biggest challenges that I think we've run into is this false narrative that families generally have that the easy button for their situation is the skilled nursing facility, which is that term for nursing home. When really nursing homes, they are meant for the people with the most physical needs of anybody, right? That's what they're meant for. And what we tend to find is they become a catch-all for situations where people don't want to have to move a second time. Let's just move them to the nursing home now instead of moving them to an independent living for 5 years in the nursing home later, right? People get so worried about that second move that they want to jump to, let's just put mom or dad in that situation. And I think for anybody that really does their homework on it, what they generally find is the skilled nursing facility is exactly what they've been trying to avoid this whole time. It's that one thing that grandma or grandpa had in their mind about, don't you ever put me in a home. Like, that's what they were envisioning, right?
Sounds so familiar.
That's what they were envisioning are these skilled nursing facilities, unfortunately, where generally you look at the independent livings, the assisted livings. I mean, those places just look like really nice hotels. Like, you walk in, it's a big open lobby, fancy, nice dining room. You know, you got your hallways filled with apartments like a hotel would have for rooms. And it's just usually not what people are expecting. And I always think that's just such a better environment for the senior to live in and thrive in than by going to that skilled nursing facility, unless you absolutely need to for the kind of care that they need. And like you said, it's actually the most expensive. It's not, it's not the cheapest. I've had people say that, like, mom doesn't have much money, we just need to go to the nursing home. And unless they have less than $17,500, it's not how it's going to work. It's not cheaper. You're going to blow through whatever's left at the fastest rate at those communities.
And correct me if I'm wrong. And then remind me the difference. There's nursing home, and what's the other one? Just a senior living center type deal?
Assisted living.
Assisted living.
Is generally what
I
people
gather
talk
too
about.
that the nursing home is more expensive because you actually have medical people on staff that are there versus the other ones are just like communities for old folks. And then it's cool too because then they have like activities and things that they can do to socialize, and it keeps them a little bit sharper, and they got buddies that can hang out.
Yeah. I mean, so in Illinois, like, you've got independent living, which is, like, most people don't realize that usually has 3 meals a day, housekeeping, transportation, like all that's in independent living usually. Assisted living is all of those things, but now you add on, hey, I can get medical care too. People can manage my medications. They can help me get dressed, bathe, run to the restroom. If I fall, they'll help me get up, like all that stuff, right? Nursing home is meant for, that next layer. That's really meant for folks, and I won't run through all the kind of guidelines, but, one of the things that could be the thing that pushes you over the edge that you need to be there is if you can't get up out of a chair or out of bed, and it takes 2 people to help you. And people don't think about that anything short of that is still assisted living. So you could need help getting up out of bed, and it could take somebody every single time. That's still just assisted living. You could need to wear Depends, and somebody has to help you take that off and clean up. Still assisted living, right? So again, people get in their mind like, oh, my loved one's bad because they anticipate themselves providing the care, and they know that they couldn't do it, but they don't realize assisted living, they can handle a big, wide spectrum of care. So that's probably the biggest thing we run into is families trying to hit that easy button, just go straight to the nursing home when it's probably not really what's needed or what's best for that senior.
And then you probably already explained this, so forgive me for asking what you already just explained. But so assisted living versus the nursing home then, is the assisted living anywhere near, does Medicaid or Medicare cover that, or does that all depend on what you got worked out? Or like
no, so Medicare will never cover anything like that. Medicaid would cover it. So in Illinois, which, who knows if that'll be all your viewership or not, but at least for right now, a piece of it, right? So in Illinois, Medicaid will not pay for assisted living, but it will pay for what's called supportive living. It's its own classification here. And for supportive living, it's very similar to the kind of care of assisted living. I tell people, paint with broad brush, just say it's assisted living for folks on Medicaid. There's some minor differences, but that's essentially what it is.
Is that the one you said that they're fewer and far between, though?
Few and farther between.
Specific.
Yeah, like here in central Illinois, we have one here in Bloomington, I think, one in Pekin, one in Peoria, one in Rantoul, one in Clinton. So it's like every 45 minutes you run across one.
Do those beds get filled up and it's like a waiting list kind of thing?
Yeah, because as you can imagine, there's a lot of people that can't afford, if it was assisted living, generally most areas, at least $4,500 a month. There's a lot of seniors that can't afford that. So there's a lot of people trying to get into those supportive living. So you really have to plan ahead in those situations. Like in a perfect world, you're probably on a wait list, maybe a year ahead of actually wanting to go.
Is that something that if you see it around the corner, is it in your interest to try to get on that wait list early, or is it like maybe that's like no duh, or is it like until you reach a certain threshold, you shouldn't explore that?
Yeah, well, it's a good question because short answer would be yes, like get on that wait list as soon as you can. But I guess one of the challenges is, again, for those supportive livings, your money has to be below that $17,500, right? So it probably depends on the community exactly how and when you can get on their wait list. But in general, yes, getting on the wait list isn't a bad thing because it just gives you first right of refusal at all these places. It doesn't mean
What does
you
that mean? I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
Can you do it like get on the wait list? I'm like, well, we're not ready yet. Can we like kind of
yeah. So it's like, hey, you're number one on the wait list. Do you want to take this apartment? Yes or no? If you say no, you still stay number one. They just call number two right now. And they go down the list until somebody says yes, and the next one opens up, they call you, and you're number one again.
I love that you're unpacking all this because, like, think of how many people don't know about this, all these details, and then they could always play this back and listen or be like, I heard this one time on this video interview that there was this great resource about all the things to do with senior care. And then hopefully, like, so this could serve as a resource for somebody, but like, they were just talking about this. What do I need to do? Let me go back and listen to that and unpack all this wonderful information Nick just shared.
That's right.
No, this is fantastic, man.
Yeah.
And I almost want to change gears and jump into something else before we get you out of here. But first of all, let's draw attention to your T-shirt here.
Yes, thank you.
Old people are cool.
Old people are cool, yes.
That's amazing.
So, I was fortunate enough last year, maybe it was a little bit into 2023, when you're starting your company, you're doing marketing. There's a million people out there doing marketing and things like that. And I like to take the approach that it probably doesn't matter what you bring to somebody on outreach. It just matters whether you're making their day better or not. They remember that more than whatever you hand them. So although I'm handing it to them, I started with these old people are cool stickers.
You're going to let me get a couple of those, at least that one?
Yeah, I definitely have some. And they were quite popular. There are these little decals. You can put them on darn near anything. And they were very popular. And I quickly became known as the guy with the stickers more than anything. So I rolled with it. And you mentioned the new and emerging business. I had Ryan Finn, who owns Infoprints here in town. He made those stickers for me. I asked him if he could make me a shirt for the event. So now I've got
shout out Ryan. He did my business cards too.
Very nice. He does mine too. Yeah.
Nice. No, that's fantastic. And I feel like you need like a stack of those stickers at every senior care facility within a stone's throw or within a.
What's the funniest is, seeing them out in the wild, I say, right? When you're just around town and like you pull up behind somebody and they've got them on their vehicle and you're like trying to peek in, you're like, I have no idea who that is, but somehow they got my sticker and put it on their car. That's always pretty fun. So we were talking about the New and Emerging Business Award. So Miss Steph Mazanowski, I show up and there's this little bag there and she had brought me this.
Is that like to celebrate? Like here, Nick, congratulations.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Look at that. Good looking out, Steph.
That.
Steph just did my headshots last week. I'm getting ready. I might post those tonight, which this will be dated. But yeah, Steph Mazanowski is a fantastic resource.
And I'm pretty sure
awesome.
I thought I brought it, but she wrote me this nice little handwritten letter. You know how you get those handwritten cards. Usually it's like a little saying and then like 2 words and no, it was like fully filled out. She did it all by hand. She did a good job.
That's really sincere and authentic. Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's
so
awesome.
Miss Steph gets a shout out too.
Can we shake that up and spray it all over? No.
I know. I figure I got to save it now and see if I win next year.
No, right? No, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So when you're not helping seniors find assisted living care, what do you do in your downtime, Nick? What are you into?
All right. So I've got 2 boys. So I got a 13-year-old and a 7.5-year-old, soon to be 8-year-old. They keep me pretty busy doing sports, things like that. In fact, we have imparted upon like overlapping seasons to where, when a boy plays AAU basketball, that kind of floats into baseball season.
All right.
And, soccer season in the spring kind of floats into baseball season. So then you get these 4 sports going on at once. So
that keeps you busy.
Yeah, that certainly keeps me busy. Other than that, I like to go to the gym, like to watch sports. Other than that, I'm kind of a homebody.
What's your sport of choice? What are you really into?
Either NBA or NFL. That's usually
those are my 2. Yeah. Those are my When I was 13, I was out day and night, rain, sleet, or shine. I was playing basketball in my driveway. I was like 5 foot flat.
Yeah.
Muggsy Bogues was my favorite player because he was 5'3". I was like, if I only lived to be 5'3", I was gonna own it and try to be
you can still go.
Be in the
still
NBA. But yeah, no, I couldn't even make the squad at Bloomington High School, so I wasn't NBA bound by any means. But I tried. Tried, Nick.
Well, those are the fun days. So my older son, he's the one that like does this, but we live on a corner lot in our neighborhood, and my son is like the son that coordinates all the kids to come to our house to play sports. So because we're on the corner lot, when I had the fence put in, I left this big long strip on the side of the house without a fence. So it's kind of a narrow and shortened football field essentially, and they play up and down that field. They're playing playing football, and then we got a hoop in the driveway they play basketball on. So It's
So
very common.
So do you have a fence that's only 3 parts, so like you couldn't let a dog out there, or am I misunderstanding the way your fence
No,
is?
misunderstanding. It's just that the way the house is positioned, because I didn't, took the fence all the way over to the edge of the property on one side, but used the house as the cutoff on the other side, and it left just this huge side yard untouched, and that's what all the kids are using for football. We got these big 2 fake field goal posts we put up at either
awesome.
end.
That's
Yep.
awesome.
And then so our house has become the house where all the kids are at all the time playing. So there's usually like somewhere between 8 and 12 boys running around playing different things. So
Where are you at? Are you in Bloomington or Normal?
Bloomington,
What school
over by
system?
North Point.
What school system are y'all in?
So Unit 5.
Okay.
My older son goes to Kingsley, and then North Point for elementary.
Is Kingsley the junior high then?
Yeah, Kingsley Junior High.
What high school y'all looking at going to?
So we'd be at Community.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's see. Is Community the one that's like the college? Or what am I thinking of? Normal Community West?
No,
Or what's
you're
the other
thinking
one?
of U-High.
U-High, that makes sense. The one. Because I heard that people are like, it's a big responsibility for high school students because it's literally an open campus. They come and go. It's kind of similar to the college experience. And they're like, some kids, I would not have been responsible enough for that.
No, I remember when I was in high school, I remember hearing things about like U-High and that's how it worked. I never really knew if that's really how it worked. Like, did they really get to sleep in and only have class 3 hours a day? I wasn't too sure.
Definitely. I definitely gathered, not definitely, but I have heard, I get the impression at least that even for lunch, like they can leave campus and go wherever for lunch.
Nice.
And like in Bloomington, that was a no-no. Like they had the hall monitors, and like if you were outside of the school, they would, I don't know, they chase you down, write you up, and like.
No, my kids need corralled. Like they need the boundaries, like
For
keep
sure.
them inside.
Did you go to high school in Pontiac then?
Yeah.
All right. What year did you graduate?
2004.
I don't want to date myself.
You just made me do it.
2000, so we're
There you
close.
go.
We're close.
Not far off.
All right, goes
We
quick,
both
don't
remember Y2K.
No, right? Such a disappointment. I remember that New Year's party and like,
Well, I remember this past year they said, it was 25-year anniversary of Y2K, and I didn't even think about that until I heard it.
That hadn't crossed my mind either.
Yeah, that'll make you feel old.
So if you were into basketball and football, did you play any in school?
Yeah, so I played baseball, basketball, and football. Not all the way through. Football was the one that I took all the way through high school. I actually played my first 2 years of college. I played at Monmouth College.
Where's that out of?
It's Monmouth, Illinois. It's over by Galesburg.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's a little school, a little Division III, kind of like Illinois Wesleyan.
What position did you play?
I started out as offensive lineman, and then they moved me to tight end, that's its own story.
That was when
that surprises people most of the time when I say that.
when I had Chad in here, I forget what you call it. It's like the very most junior kind of pro league, and he said it was some sort of Iron Man. It was 8-man teams. They played offense and defense, and I was just like, I had no idea. Like,
see, my body was too torn up. Like I probably shouldn't have even tried in college. I mean, I was hurt enough after high school, and then after 2 years of college, I pay for it still.
Same thing Buddy said. He said, so he's in high school, right? He said he heard like a noise in his knee, but then, be tough and fight through it, play through it. And like a few weeks later, he's like, no, something's definitely wrong. He says he's had multiple surgeries. And like, so yeah, anyone out there that injures themselves, take care of yourself.
Yep.
Take care of those injuries.
Yep. Mine was my back, and I pay for it still all the time.
That's rough.
Yeah.
That's rough. I got some friends with some, I was in the Army, and we were airborne paratroopers. And a good friend of mine who lives in Nashville now, he has a back injury, and just every day waking up with chronic pain. I feel sorry for you guys.
Mm-hmm. Ooh. Chiropractors helped me be doable for many years now, but there was a couple of years there when I got done with college that, I could hardly move around.
Do you got like a slip disc, or what's wrong with your back?
I got a few bulging discs. They found that they're now degenerating discs. I've got SI joints, which are like over on the side of your hips, kind of. Both of my SI joints already have some arthritis building in them.
Got a long way to go, Nick. Hopefully,
I know, and not good. So yeah, I got. I think now I've had 3 rounds of injections in them in the last couple of years.
Wish you the best with that. With
Thank
those degenerating discs, is that going to be problems in the future?
Probably. It makes me shorter all the time. I know that much. I used to be a little taller, but yeah, I'm sure it won't be fun. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm sorry for your troubles. Yeah, those sports will get you, won't they? I'm sorry to hear that. So who's your team? You Bears fan then?
Yeah, Bears fan.
All right. So I was born in Fort Worth. I'm a Dallas fan. And
Okay.
silly me, all these years I was just rooting for my Cowboys. I didn't realize they're like the equivalent of the New York Yankees or something. They're America's team.
Yeah,
and I guess
everybody
it's
loves
because they were on TV, they were televised, they're
Yeah.
the biggest marketed team. And then it's like, it's almost an insult to be a Cowboys fan, but I got roots
But
to
I mean,
it.
because you're only a couple years older than me, I mean, I remember the 90s Cowboys, so I can only imagine. Like, my son, when he started liking basketball, is when the Warriors were huge, so he's a Warriors fan. So
Makes sense.
I think we're all a product of, like, who was the big team when we were growing up.
No, for sure. And that's what, like, my kid right now, like, so I'm a second generation Cowboys fan. So part of me is like, I'm not just a Cowboys fan because they're America's team. My dad was a Cowboys fan. I was born in Fort Worth, All Saints Hospital. I lived in Dallas, Fort Worth area until I was 6 years old. So, like, I'm a Cowboys fan. And I've never jumped teams because I've lived in this community for so long. And then I was in Germany the year that the Bears went to the Super Bowl and Devin Hester ran it back.
Yeah.
And so it came out like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And my boss just happened to be a Bears fan. And he let me come to his apartment. We're sitting there sipping Crown Royal at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning watching. He's like, you don't got to be in until noon tomorrow. I'm like, yeah. But so, yeah, Devin Hester ran it back. They went on to lose that game. But I used to say Bears are my second team. Like, I appreciate it. And then I used to only watch my team. Excuse me. Now I get it that, like, if you're into football, it's in your interest to see what's going on in the rest of the leagues. Then you know what's going on with the other teams, and like you understand, like,
well, especially when you're in the middle of like a what was it, 3-12, 4-12 season, whatever it was, right? When you're in the middle of that, it's like you got to start watching something else.
You got to watch something else, and I'm glad you brought that up. So my kid jumped in. He's starting to get interested in football, right? And he's like, Dad, we got this losing bum team, and he's like, he's showing interest in the Chiefs, and I'm like, you're gonna suffer with me. We're not bandwagon jumpers, but so, I feel bad for him.
So I just told somebody this story. Actually, it was my new advisor up in West Chicagoland. I was just telling her this story last week because she's a Packers fan, unfortunately. So my son, when he was growing up, my older son Graham, he loved the color green. He still loves the color green, his favorite color, but like obsessed with the color green, right? To the point where I remember telling my wife, we can't let him see a Packers game playing. Like, if he inadvertently falls in love with their jersey, like, that's not acceptable. So I would not let like if the Packers were playing the Lions or somebody else, I just wouldn't let that game play just for the heck of it because I didn't want him to see it. So the only time he saw it was finally like a year later. Bears Packers were playing. And it was finally like, okay, like, we watched the game together. Last time I skipped it so he couldn't see it. It's time, right? And the only way that we got through is I started early on, like, calling him the pickles to get him to laugh and get him to, like, use that to jab him. Because I was very terrified that his love for the color green would make him a Packers fan.
That's so funny.
So that's how I fought against that at the time.
So you called the Packers the pickles to try to defer your kid from showing interest.
It worked.
That's so funny.
Yep.
So both your boys are Bears fans, of course?
Well, I think that's what started the conversation. So the older one is definitely a Bears fan. The younger one, again, we're in the mode of making sure he knows who we're fans of. We haven't had to go to the pickles yet, but he also likes red, not green. So I guess I need to watch out for the Chiefs.
No, yeah.
Make sure he doesn't go down that road. I didn't think about it. But that wouldn't hurt my heart as much as a Packers fan.
You know, right? Totally. Those division rivals.
Right. I remember my younger son, I definitely have to tell him we're a Cubs fan because he doesn't watch baseball at all. So I'm like, we're Cubs fans.
Gotcha.
That way he doesn't get confused, especially red. Go Cardinals.
That's a bug. Oh, no, especially that. Yeah, we're never big baseball fans. When I lived in Chicago, we lived like 9 blocks south of Wrigley Field.
Yeah.
So I was like, I guess we're baseball fans. And then so I rock with the Cubs a little bit. And then when I was a kid, I remember feeling left out, like that FOMO, right? Like I thought football was boring. I'm like, it's the same thing over and over again. Like, how are you into this? Mm-hmm. And then when like the cool kids were playing on the Pee Wee teams, you know, and like everyone's talking about, like, well, what am I missing out on? So I remember being right around that age, probably around 10 or so, when like kids were really getting into football. Like, it wasn't my bag yet. And right around then is when I started to get into it. So I feel like, and there's like a meme going around. It's like when you're 12, you pick your football team and it ruins the rest of your life.
Yep.
No, that's great. So who y'all follow for basketball?
There we're all over the place. So I obviously grew up a Bulls fan.
Of course.
But then I became a bit of a Lakers fan during the Shaq and Kobe days. So I kind of have 2 teams I roll with. And then my son started watching basketball during the Warriors.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
So he's all about the Warriors. So we're kind of all over the board on basketball.
And I guess that's just like when I was a kid, I was a hip hop fan. I'm like, only Cowboys. Like, you can be multiple fans. I feel like the team thing is kind of hard. You can change teams, you can whatever, you can be influenced by something. Yeah. But like if you're literally the guy that every 3 years you have a new team just because you want to be on that winning team, like I think that's a weird way to have fandom. But you know, to each their own. But that's not my bag. I'm gonna ride it out.
Yeah, and I suppose that's the good thing for me with college football. I don't have a college football team, so I'm able to just roll with whatever team's hot and I want to see them play somebody good, right? I could just focus on that.
And then back to that too, like I used to only watch Cowboys games, which lucky for me, they were televised a lot. But like now it is fun. Like I didn't care about any other team, but now it is fun. One, too, when you watch football long enough, they move everyone around. Like I used to want to be current. I want to know all the players, but you can't. Every year there's constantly changes and people are moving around and there's the free agency and everything. You can't stay unless you put hours of your life into it every week studying it and looking into it. You can't stay super current on it. Or maybe you can, depends on what your interests are. But I struggle to keep up with it.
I remember when I was a kid, like I was one of those kids that would like with the cards, I would memorize the stats on the back or something. Like that. Now, granted, not like savant way, but I did it in my own way, right? Like, so I was all about that. And I remember I was probably 13, 14. I remember saying something to my dad about like when he didn't know who people were. I'm like, how do you not know who this person is, right? And I remember saying like, I don't have time to know all that. And now I know what he's talking about. Like I don't, like something has to give. And for me, it's been baseball. Like I know very little about baseball anymore. I know I'm a Cubs fan, and that's about as far as it goes because I've lost so much touch with that. And for a while, it was basketball too until my son took such an interest, and I had to pick it back up. But you just don't have as much time to memorize all that stuff and be into all of it.
No, right. I was so into the NBA. Once upon a time, I could tell you every single team's starting five and their sixth man.
Oh, yeah.
And like maybe that changes or whatever, but at the time, like when I was 13, 14 years old, I had all the Beckett magazines. I'd sit and just study the cards. I knew everybody's stats and assists.
There'd be a trade and you know how it was going to affect the lineup.
right. Yeah, I was super into the NBA. And now like I just don't watch the NBA. And part of it was that I was a Hornets fan because I like Muggsy Bogues.
Oh, yeah. And then
they
went away
I was
for
like
a while.
Alonzo Mourning and Larry Johnson in them. And then like I was in that space. And of course, you can't live in this community and not know what's happening with the Bulls. So, like Michael Jordan and them were the dynasty and just they were everywhere. They're the biggest thing in basketball. But
the Hornets had the sweet jerseys back then.
No, yeah. I was recently, I was going to get, I want the Muggsy Bogues jersey. Okay. I actually ordered it. I was going to get the matching shoes.
Yeah.
I put the jersey on. I was just like, I can't rock a basketball jersey.
Can't do it anymore?
I can't do it. It just looked wrong on me. I legit returned it. I had my Muggsy Bogues jersey in hand.
Oh, you should have framed it or something. You could have framed it, used it as decoration.
I'm about to get it like a signed one.
I got this really cool Tony Kukoc jersey at TJ Maxx like 2 years ago. Where I came across it. It was this retro jersey, had like graffiti all over. So obviously it wasn't a real one. But I could not buy it. Like the little kid in me, I was like, I can't not buy this. I got enough money to buy it. So I'm going to buy this. This is my adult gift to my young self. I don't wear it. But what I envisioned is eventually I'll put it in a frame or something. I'll put it like up in a bar type area or something. Like I'm keeping that because I'm not going to run across that again.
That nostalgia is real. That's why those Funkos. Like I hate going to the store. I'm not trying to spend any money. You'll just see that one thing that like it just speaks to your inner child. And you're like, I can't not go home without this. Double negative.
You're like $100. I got $100.
right. And speaking of toys, it's completely random and off topic, but it's sort of we're going to change gears. I could sit and talk movies and TV all day. Now I find way less time to stare at TV. I used to be all about it. I used to love watching movies and talking movies. And like when I was in the Army, and my downtime is my escapism. I didn't like being in the Army, so then I would drink and watch movies and TV. I find another movie person. That was my dude. We just sit and talk movies. Every time I see you, we just chop it up and talk movies. And then I went to film school and I do this now. Imagine that. But so now like people like recommend a show or something, and it's like, I got a list of ones I'm curious about, and eventually I'm going to get to them. But like, I can't watch everything I want to. There's just not time for it.
Yeah, no, I run into that all the time. So like, I don't watch a whole lot of TV because of that. It's not that I don't want to. It's just I don't have the time to. But people are always suggesting shows, and I don't even pretend like I'm going to watch them anymore because I'm like I have like 4 shows in my head that I want to watch, and that will take me a year. So it's like I can't even get to yours. Like,
what's the last thing you watched, or what are you into? You're like, I work. I don't watch TV.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't.
A little bit of football. No.
I mean, I watch a lot of the just because I can do it like while I'm eating, right? Like the Gordon Ramsay cooking shows, like the little competition thing.
You ever watch Top Chef?
Yeah, I've seen that one. Yep. So like those sort of things, like because you could play that and not pay attention the whole time, So something like that. I'm trying to think if I've got one right. Oh, they've got what's that new the prequel to Game of Thrones. I'm watching that.
I know what you're talking about.
Slowly.
I can't even think of the name
Slowly.
of it. Did you like Game of Thrones?
Yeah, I
What'd you think of the last season? Were you disappointed or you went with
I was disappointed with the ending, of course. I think a lot of people were, but...
I talked to someone recently who didn't watch it, and he's like, I'm curious about it. And I was like, I think it may have been the writer's strike was part of that. But I know that, like, so here's the way I explained it. I'm like, there's 7 kingdoms. It's this big, in-depth story. you got to put a bookend on it. You're not going to close out everyone's story the best way, and you're not going to make everyone happy, right? But I didn't watch it as it came out. Like, I watched Game of Thrones. I don't remember when I watched it, but it definitely wasn't like week in, week out. I was staying current with it, right? So I had heard the backlash. I knew people were super disappointed, so I lowered the bar. I'm like, oh, the ending's going to be trash. I didn't mind it. You got to end it somehow, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and I was the same way. I didn't start it until the series was all the way over. Nice. Like, that's how far behind I was. And that's how I am for most things. Like,
right.
It's like I can't do it.
Yeah, staying current on shows, especially in this streaming age. Like, it used to be like Thursday at 7. Now, like, how in the hell are you going to stay up on some shows? Like, there's so many, and there's
I don't know how people do it. Like,
and
again, as a parent, it's like I can't do a weekend binge. I don't get that luxury. So, like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Before I had a kid, when I worked at my old TV news station. I used to work at a TV news station as associate producer. My good buddy, he would talk about he started movies. It would take him 2 or 3 times to finish it. I just think, like, how? Like, you're going to pause a movie and come back to it? That takes you out of it. And I was just like, how? Oh, I get it now. Now that I got a kid, like, I'll watch a movie in 2 or 3 parts sometimes. It's like, it's not rare, but it's pretty rare. I just sit down and spaz out for 2 hours uninterrupted and watch a movie.
Yeah. I more end up with, like, once every year or 2, I'll get this one show I go through, like Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones. There was this one, because I used to travel for work before I started this company. And so, like, I'd get that little window of time where you had to be on airplane mode on the planes, like, each way, right? And there was this show on Netflix. I don't know if it was really popular or not, but I got super into it, called 100. So it's just 100.
I know you're talking about the competition show, right?
No, not that one. I know
mind.
I think I know which one you're talking about. But no, this is just called 100, and it's kind of a sci-fi thing, which I wouldn't have thought I'd be into. But man, the twists and turns of that one, like, it's kind of like Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad, where it keeps you on the edge of your seat. And I got super into that one.
Now that you mentioned, I think I might have saw that one.
Yeah.
Now, here's part of why I brought this up, because I just got introduced to a show.
Okay.
And it floored me. I'm like, I didn't see it coming. So someone suggested I watch it, and I gave it a shot. And again, I told them, I said, I'm very picky about what I allocate my time to.
Yeah.
I can't just watch every show that somebody says is cool.
Yeah.
And I gave it a shot, and I was like, this isn't my bag. Well, then, I don't know if you knew, like, I do 2D work. I used to draw and do 2D work. I thought I would have been a graphic designer or an illustrator. I didn't know I'd pick up a camera and pursue this. But, so Buddy suggested it. I checked it out, and I was like, oh, that's in my bag. Okay, that's where I was going with this. There's an artist that I've followed since I lived in Chicago, since like 2012. So I've been following dude on social media for over a decade. He drew a picture of a character and said #Jinx. And he's like, he said, I'm obsessed with this show. And I was like, well, who's Jinx? So I looked it up, and I was like, well, Jinx isn't a show. And I was like, oh, it's a character in a show. It's the show that this guy recommended that I see.
So then you watched it.
Well, then hold on. Then I have a buddy it's an animated show. And I got a buddy who's super into anime. And again, he's told me, oh, you got to watch this. You got to watch that. I'm probably not going to just jump into all these anime shows that Buddy suggested.
Right.
I was like, well, you're into that genre. And I asked him, did y'all check this out? I got a thread with him and his wife. I said, have you seen Arcane? He said, oh, yeah, I love that show. It's incredible. His wife jumped in and said, it is an excellent show. I'm like, oh, they both co-signed it. Then I jumped on Rotten Tomatoes. Has 100% critic ratings and high 90s for audience ratings.
That's
I'm
pretty
like,
good.
If Buddy said it was good, the artist said it was good, 2 of my oldest childhood friends said it was good, and Rotten Tomatoes said it was good, I'm going to check it out.
All right. What's the name of it?
Arcane League of Legends. So it's based on a computer video game, which isn't my bag. I don't get down in that space. But did you see the Spider-Man Spider-Verse show cartoon?
Yes.
You know, the Miles Morales one?
Yeah.
I thought those were incredible.
Thanks to my kids, yeah.
Well, being growing up in the art space and wanting to draw and be an illustrator, when I saw that, I was like, this is incredible, because it's a combination of, I don't know if you know, maybe I'm speaking wrong here. I should look this up before I spit facts.
Yeah, somebody's going to be in your comments.
Like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's 3D animation, but then I think they went frame by frame and went over it with 2D, like Photoshop, on top of the 3D animation. So it's got all these textures on top of, like, it's a really unique way to animate. The Ninja Turtles movie did something similar. Like 10 years ago even, they weren't like Monsters, Inc. and them. Yeah. They weren't animating features like this. So when I saw Spider-Man, my mind was blown. I was like, this is the coolest animation I've ever seen. Now, Arcane's similar to that. It's not quite as like graffiti or modern whatever. The aesthetic though looks like a live action painting almost. Oh, so cool. The visual aesthetic's neat, And it's great you mentioned Game of Thrones, because this epic tale of like this class war, and then it's wildly science fiction, which again, if that's your bag or not, but like it's neat. It mixes like magic with science fiction. And there's like these badass female characters for girl power, and that's beside the point. But it's just I'm into it, and just took a couple episodes. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give it a shot.
Sometimes that's what it takes. There's a few episodes.
Only 2 seasons, and we just finished the first season, and it leaves you with a crazy cliffhanger. And when I find time to, I'm looking forward to jumping back in and seeing how they finish it up. Nice. But yeah, Arcane, it's super neat. And if you're in the animation space or sci-fi or whatever, put it on your list, Nick. You ain't gonna have time for it.
Exactly. Well, it's funny. It reminds me of, that's how Breaking Bad was. Is like you had to fight through the first however many episodes because it was just boring, and then it was like, but it gets good. You gotta stick with it.
I gave that one a shot. And then there's the Mexican dude. He was in Training Day. Yeah. He was been in a bunch of movies. And when I saw him, I hate to do that sometimes. Like, I know you got to suspend disbelief. Sometimes when I see certain actors, I'm like, all I see is that actor. I'm like, he's a dude playing a part. And I just couldn't get past it. Yeah. And I was like, I just can't watch it. He might have been season 2 or 3. Like, I gave it a decent shot. And I was like, it's him. It's like,
you got that far in and didn't like it? Wow.
I gave up. And again, too, it's like, where's my time going? I was like, I can't finish this. And still probably got 5 seasons left or something. It's a big show, right?
Yeah. It goes for a while. Well, like that's how I am with like audiobooks too. Like I'm like, how do people have time for this? I've had one audiobook. I've been trying to listen to the whole thing for 4 or 5 months, and I think it says I still have 4 hours left. I'm like, how? Like I don't know how people do this. So the one it's called Clockwork.
Do you only do audiobooks or do you read?
I just do audiobooks because I won't do it. I won't read. Like I'll set aside and I just never do it. Bro, and I'm one of those people that probably a little ADHD. I'll read it and I'll get distracted in my own mind. I'll have to go back and reread it. Audiobook works out better for me. But yeah, it's called, where is it? Here it is.
Don't you love technology sometimes?
I do remember the name is like crazy. I'll never say it right. Oh, I forgot about that. Okay.
While you're looking that up, I'll bore you with a quick tell. When I finished college, when I was in college, I was like, this degree, I've said this before on camera, I think. I'm like, this degree is going to be the end all. It's going to open up all the doors, right? I had a cinema degree. I made straight A's in college, graduated with a 3.8 GPA. And at the end of the day, in my industry specifically, it really is what you know and who you know. They could give a damn less that I have a 3.8 GPA, right? And I would go and they'd be like, read 16 chapters by next Tuesday. I might not have read it every single word, but I'd browse through. I did all the college reading. Yeah. When I got out of college, I was sick of reading. I went almost a decade without picking up another book.
Really?
And then a guy I was in the Army with got blown up, and he got hurt, lost an eye, a bunch of terrible trauma. He wrote a book about it. I was like, and he was my squad leader. I got some memories with this guy. And I was like, I'm going to read his book. And I'm so glad I did. After reading his book, I was like, oh, I want to get back into reading. I was like, I'm a small business owner. I don't know shit about business. I'm just trying to figure this out on the fly. So I started reading business books. And over the course of about 2 years, I read like 15 or more books, and like anywhere from Diary of a CEO to I had already read Think and Grow Rich, but quite a few. Jeffrey Gitomer's Little Red Book of Sales. Shout out Ted Wolfe. You know Ted?
Ted Wolfe from...
He's an ambassador. He's at all the events. Yeah. Ted recommended that. We sat down. I was like, "What?" Sometimes I pick people's brain. Like, what's your recommended reading? And he's like, "Oh, Think and Grow Rich." Or, keep saying that. Jeffrey Gitomer's Little Red Book of Sales. And so many jewels of knowledge in there. But anyway, like I read Buddy's book about his personal experience getting blown up, and it just encouraged me or motivated me to start reading again. Yeah. And I've gotten so much knowledge the last few years about business.
Yeah, I need to be better at that. But that's also why I'm trying to do the audiobooks, because I'm like, I need the knowledge. So the one that I've been working on for what feels like ever is Clockwork by Michael Lowitz. I would never be able to pronounce his name. But that one's more about like how to organize your business during expansion so that it's not running you as the owner, that you're actually running the business, right? And it was good timing for me when somebody recommended it.
Timing?
It was right when somebody was, it was right when I was doing some expansion. So it was like, might have been nice to have listened to it 3 months earlier, but it was all still pertinent information. The one that's really gotten me, and I don't know if I've told anybody this, but it actually ended up being a big piece of how and why I put it all together to start my company. It's called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Have you heard of that one?
I've heard of that one.
So yeah, I don't remember all the details of what it was about, but one of my takeaways was it really emphasizes the fact that like there's something that you are probably an expert at. Like you spent your 10,000 hours on, right? And not everybody's 10,000 hours is something that's going to end up being fruitful for you. But some people's it will, right? And they talk about how, like, no matter who you are, it takes luck too. Like, and I don't know if that's the phrase they use as luck, but they give scenarios of like there's usually 7 different stops to where you kind of benefited from a little bit of luck in order to get to that huge success of, you know, Bill Gates, let's say. And one of the things that it was talking about that resonated with me is it was giving this example of I think it was lawyers in New York City in whatever time frame. It was some decade, right? And it was talking about Jewish lawyers and how they didn't get any of the good work. They got the crap work, right? And corporate mergers apparently used to be like dirty work. You know, when it was like that hostile takeover corporate merger, that used to be dirty work beneath most lawyers. And the only people that do it were the Jewish lawyers. And it didn't pay much. It didn't hardly do anything. Well, guess what? They became amazing at it. And over time, that became the skill set that, you know, you do those deals and you get hundreds of millions of dollars, right? You get insane amounts of money for getting it done nowadays, right? And that was what their specialty was in. So it's talking about like, hey, they didn't control the fact that all of a sudden the tide shifted and the thing that was valued very little is all of a sudden valued greatly. Like they didn't control that. They benefited from it, but they'd put in their work on the thing that they needed to know, right? And at that time, I was looking around Central Illinois, right? And quite honestly, in a phase that I think a lot of us go through of going like, it's kind of, you know, would it benefit me to be in a bigger area, right? Is that better for my career and my, you know, people knowing me or whatever I can do, right? And I started thinking about the things that I knew and all of that, and I was like, I know senior living to an extreme degree. I know senior care, you know, to an expert level. And I know small towns. I'm from a small town. I live in a town that's a little bit bigger now, but, you know, and the more I thought about it, I'm like, these are the two things that go together. I knew of an organization that did something kind of like what I do, not quite, but kind of. And that's kind of where I put it all together, was resonating over and over on that book of like, what is it? And do I have something somewhere? And I felt like I did. Felt like I knew something.
So you read that prior to starting your business?
Yeah.
And it was kind of, it sounds like one of the key reasons why you started it then.
I probably listened to it maybe 8 months before I started the company, and kept just kind of thinking about it, and the pieces started to fall together for me a little bit.
That's interesting too, because, you know, they say like, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
It's outside of your lane, or just you don't have experience in it. That's one thing. Sometimes you don't know what you do know because you take it for granted. You've seen it all day, every day. You're a subject matter expert in it. And then when someone has never heard of it, never dabbled in it, doesn't know anything about it, it's just like, one, you almost can't believe it. You don't know anything about that. But then it's like, with some self-reflection, it's like, oh, damn, I am an expert in this space. Like, and then how can you provide value to those people that don't know it, especially if it's something like senior care?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And for me, it was, you know, all of the going to work for somebody else options that I had gone after over the years. Being able to stay in Bloomington as my home base was always a challenge. It was finding an organization that would give me a role that I want, that would allow me to stay. Very few would. They all wanted me to move to, like, there's hubs around the country kind of for senior living. Dallas is a big one. Portland is a big one. And it's like they always want you to relocate to these areas. And it was that need of, they never want me to stay where I'm at, and kind of thinking it through, go, wait a minute. That means there aren't people like me that are still sitting here either. They keep pulling all these people out of these areas. Right? So all the expertise ends up in Dallas, Texas, and it's no longer wherever they started at, right? And that's kind of, again, I don't know how I connected all the dots, but that was one of the things that just kept flowing through my mind that ended up getting me to this point.
Well, I think it's a good thing you did. It sounds like you really are, and I hate to be like, oh, you're a resource, but like you know so much about this, and I recently went through it. I think I saw you at a chamber event, and I was like, Nick, I need to holler at you.
Yeah.
It ended up organically going the way it did, and we had some hospice folks come in, and then they answered a lot of our questions. It worked out the way that it did, and it took its own course. But just knowing that you were a resource, there's so many people that could benefit from all your knowledge. And I think even just doing this to share that will be helpful to somebody. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. And I think that was a great example of, like, you didn't even, if I remember right, you didn't know what you wanted from me. You just wanted to tell me the story and see what came to my mind, right? Like, hey, this is what's going on. Like, you work in this space. Like, what does any of this mean to you, right? And I think that more and more families would benefit from, like, hey, you don't have to know what you want. Just call and tell us what's going on. And even if it's not exactly what we do, we probably know who you should talk to or resources, and we can at least point you in the right direction.
No, awesome. Well, before you get out of here, you're going to have to let me get a couple of those stickers.
Oh, of course. Yes, we got stickers.
Well, Nick, I thank you so much for your time. I think this has been great. This has been awesome.
Yeah,
I love hearing more about what you're doing. And congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Maybe next year you'll get it. No.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Nick.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Jumped out in this fresh gear. Next year is my best year. This year is my flex on. Like a shoe deal with a check on. It might be like a Nike with a